Be me, 28, working as a logistics manager. It's a decent job, lots of spreadsheets, lots of planning, lots of making sure object A gets to point B without everything catching on fire. I like it because it's logical, cause and effect. You do X, you get Y. Simple. My life outside of work was pretty simple too. Gym, hang out with a couple of close friends, work on my car. Wasn't actively looking for a relationship after the last one ended, but wasn't against it either. Met Clara through a mutual friend at a birthday party a while back, maybe last spring. She was smart, funny, passionate about her work in social media marketing. Seemed cool. We hit it off, exchanged numbers. First few dates were normal. Coffee, a walk in the park, a movie. I paid for things. Not because I'm some kind of traditionalist, but because it's just what I've always done on a first or second date. It's a nice gesture. She'd always do this little performance. Reach for her purse, make a show of it, and say something like, "You don't have to, you know, I'm a fully capable woman." And I'd say, "I know, I want to." And she'd smile and let me. Seemed fine at the time. The first hint of her worldview came pretty early. We were talking about work, and I mentioned a female colleague who was doing really well, getting promoted fast. Clara got this weird look on her face, said something like, she probably had to work twice as hard as any man to get there. The patriarchy puts up so many invisible barriers. I didn't think much of it, just nodded along. A lot of people talk like that these days. A couple of weeks in, she needed to assemble some furniture she'd ordered online. A big, complicated bookshelf. She called me up, said the instructions looked like they were written in another language and her hands hurt. So I came over after work, spent the next 3 hours on her floor with a tiny Allen key and 100 different screws. It was one of those frustrating jobs where you get to the last step and realize you put the main panel on backwards. Had to take half of it apart again. All the while, she was on her couch, scrolling on her phone, occasionally offering helpful advice. "Are you sure that piece goes there? The picture looks different." Finally, it's done. I'm sweating, my knuckles are scraped, but the bookshelf is standing. It looks good. I stood up, feeling pretty accomplished. She looked up from her phone, smiled, and said, "See, men are good for something after all." It was meant as a joke, I think, but it didn't feel like one. There was no "thank you so much" or "I really appreciate you giving up your evening for this." Just a smug little comment, as if I'd just performed a basic function I was designed for. Little things started to pile up. She hated driving, so I ended up being her personal chauffeur most of the time. If it was raining, I'd get a text. "Can you swing by and get me? I don't want my hair to get frizzy." Never an offer for gas money, not once. When I brought it up jokingly, she said, "Oh, please, don't be one of those guys who nickel and dimes women. It's a bad look, toxic even." Then came the restaurant incident. We were at a nice Italian place for our, 1-month-ish anniversary. The meal was great. Conversation was flowing. Everything felt good. The waiter brings the bill and places it in the middle of the table. I reach for it, and she puts her hand on mine. "Let's talk about this," she said, with a serious expression. "Okay?" The dynamic of a man always paying is a holdover from a patriarchal system where women were seen as property. It reinforces the idea that we're being provided for and thus owe the man something in return. I'm just sitting there, holding the bill, completely confused. "I was just trying to be nice, Clara." "I know," she said, softening her tone a little. "But it's the principle. I'm an independent woman. I don't need you to provide for me." She made a big show of opening her purse and pulling out her card. "So, we're splitting it?" I asked. She paused. "Well, since you're already offering, I guess we can let this one slide. But it's important we had this conversation." She put her card away. I paid the full amount. Later that night, our mutual friend sent me a screenshot from Clara's private social media story. It was a picture of her pasta, captioned, "Forcing him to confront his privilege one free meal at a time. Das ist smash, the patriarchy." My stomach just sank. It wasn't about the money. It was the deception, the public mockery. She was playing a game, and I was the punchline. The whole emotional labor thing was the next level. I had a really stressful period at work. A huge shipment was delayed. Customers were furious. My boss was breathing down my neck. I came home one evening feeling completely drained. I tried to talk to her about it, just to vent. I got maybe 2 sentences in. She held up a hand. "Stop. I need you to respect my boundaries. I don't have the capacity to absorb your negative work energy right now. I was stunned. I just wanted to talk. That's the thing, she explained, like she was teaching a child. Men have been conditioned to use women as unpaid therapists. It's a huge burden. You need to learn how to process your own emotions without offloading them onto me. It's called emotional regulation. I didn't even know what to say. I just shut up. The very next day she called me, crying, legitimately sobbing into the phone. My first thought was that something terrible had happened. I asked what was wrong, my heart pounding. The issue? Her favorite coffee shop had used oat milk in her latte instead of almond milk, and she didn't realize it until she was already back at her office. This catastrophic event apparently warranted a full 45-minute phone call. I had to listen to every detail. How the barista was probably incompetent, how it ruined her whole morning, how she felt so unseen and unheard in that moment. I just sat there at my desk, listening to her, thinking about what she had told me less than 24 hours earlier. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, but I was still trying to be the good boyfriend. I listened. I said, "That sucks, and I'm sorry that happened," in all the right places. I felt like I was losing my mind. It was a relationship of one-way streets. My time, my money, my energy, my emotional support. It all flowed in one direction, to her. Anything I asked for in return was met with a lecture about patriarchy, male entitlement, or toxic masculinity. She complained constantly about a male coworker. This guy apparently had the audacity to ask her for help with a report. "He just assumes I'll do his work for him," she'd vent. "It's that classic male weaponized incompetence. He expects me to do the office housework." A week later, she asked me to spend a whole afternoon helping her draft a marketing proposal for one of her freelance clients. "You're a logistics guy. You're good at making things sound organized," she said. It wasn't a request. It was an expectation. So my labor was fine, but her coworkers was an imposition. Got it. Everything was a test, and I was always failing. If I opened a door for her, I was treating her like she was weak. If I didn't open a door for her, I was an inconsiderate slob who wasn't raised right. There was no way to win. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time. My friends started noticing. "You seem stressed, man," one of them said when we were out for a beer. "It's just work," I lied. I was too embarrassed to tell them what was really going on. I felt like they'd just tell me to dump her, and for some stupid reason, I wasn't ready to. I still thought maybe I was the one who was wrong. Maybe I needed to be more enlightened. The breaking point came on a Saturday. It was probably a month or two ago now. The weather was just starting to get nice. Clara called me on a Wednesday. "I need you to keep your entire Saturday free for me." "No, please, no, would you mind?" Just a demand. I actually had plans. My friends and I were going to go hiking, something we'd been trying to organize for ages. I told her this. "You're seriously choosing to go for a walk in the woods over helping your girlfriend?" she asked, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Wow, okay, I see where your priorities are." So I caved, like an idiot. I canceled on my friends. They were annoyed, but they said they understood. Saturday morning, I show up at her apartment. In her living room are about a dozen heavy-looking cardboard boxes. "What's all this?" I asked. "It's for my new art project," she said, beaming. "It's a mixed media installation exploring the commercialization of the female experience." "Okay, and what do you need me to do?" "I need you to move it all to a storage unit across town." The boxes were full of old books, pieces of scrap metal, and God knows what else. Each one felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor. No elevator. I spent the next 5 hours hauling those boxes down 3 flights of stairs, loading them into the back of a rental van, driving across town, and then unloading them into a stuffy, windowless storage unit. Clara's contribution was to supervise. She stood with her hands on her hips, directing me. "Be careful with that one. It's fragile. Try to organize them by size. It'll be more efficient. You should really lift with your legs, not your back. It's safer." I didn't say a word. I just kept working. I was drenched in sweat. My muscles were aching. My hands were raw. Finally, we were done. The last box was in the unit. I slammed the rolling door shut, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. We got back in the van. I was driving. I was completely silent. I was just so tired, not just physically, but mentally. We got back to her apartment, and I collapsed onto her couch. She came over from the kitchen with 2 glasses of water. She didn't thank me. She sat down opposite me, took a sip of water, and looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she began in that same instructional tone, "in a way, what you did today was a form of restorative justice." I just stared at her. I had no idea what she was talking about. For centuries, men have benefited from the unpaid physical and domestic labor of women. So, when a man performs a difficult physical task for a woman, you could see it as a very small, almost insignificant form of reparation, a symbolic rebalancing of the scales. That was it. That was the moment. It wasn't a big angry explosion. It was just a quiet click. A switch flipped in my brain. The part of me that was always trying to understand, to be patient, to see her side of things, it just went dark. All the frustration, all the resentment, all the quiet humiliations of the past few months suddenly coalesced into a single, ice-cold thought. Okay, I looked at her smug, self-satisfied face. I saw her not as my girlfriend, but as a system of rules, a set of hypocritical, self-serving protocols. And me, the logistics manager, I realized what I had to do. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to fight. I was just going to follow her rules, all of them, to the letter. I stood up. "I should get going," I said. My voice was completely flat. She seemed surprised. "Oh, you're not staying over?" "No, I'm tired. I have some things to do." I walked to the door. I didn't kiss her goodbye. I just left. As I walked home, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt calm. I felt like I had a plan, a clear, logical, step-by-step procedure to follow. She wanted a world where no one owed anyone anything. She wanted a world without obligation, without unwritten social contracts. Fine. I was going to give her exactly that. The experiment was about to begin. The first test of my new policy came a few days later. Clara texted me. "Dinner tonight? That new Thai place?" I replied, "Sure, sounds good." We met at the restaurant. The vibe was already off. I was polite, but distant. I wasn't initiating much conversation, just responding to her. She was doing all the work, and she seemed confused by it. The food was good. The meal ended. The waiter put the bill on the table. She glanced at it, then looked at me, waiting. I pulled my phone out. I opened the calculator app. "Okay, let's see," I said, my voice neutral. "The total is $64.30. Your green curry was $18 and your cocktail was $14, so that's $32. Your share of the appetizer is $5. We'll split the tax and tip, so your total is $41.15. You can just send it to me on Venmo." Her face was a picture, a mix of shock and disbelief. Her mouth opened, then closed. She couldn't form a sentence. What are you doing?" She finally managed to get out. "Just splitting the bill," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "We're equals, right? You're an independent woman. I don't owe you a free dinner, and you don't owe me one." I was using her own words, every single one, and she knew it. She couldn't argue. To argue would be to admit her entire philosophy was a sham. She just stared at me, her cheeks turning red. She slowly took out her phone and sent the money. The little notification pinged on my phone immediately. The rest of the evening was silent. The drive back to her place was the most awkward 10 minutes of my life. I pulled up to her building. "Well, good night," I said, not making any move to get out of the car. She was waiting for me to walk her to her door. I always did, but I just sat there, hands on the wheel. "Aren't you coming up?" she asked. "Nah, I'm pretty tired. Got an early start tomorrow," I said. "You'll be okay getting in, right? You're a capable woman." The look she gave me could have melted steel. She got out and slammed the car door so hard the whole vehicle shook. I drove home with a small, grim smile on my face. Phase 1 was a success. A week went by. Things were tense. She was trying to act like nothing was wrong, but the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Then I got the call I was waiting for. It was a Tuesday evening. I was just settling in to watch a game. "My sink is making a horrible noise and there's water everywhere," she said, her voice frantic. "You have to come over." The old me would have been in my car before she finished the sentence. The new me leaned back on the couch. "Wow, that sounds really stressful," I said, my voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "A plumbing issue can be so disruptive." There was a pause. "So, are you coming?" "Me? Clara, I'm a logistics manager, not a plumber. I'd probably just make it worse. But you're good at this stuff. You fixed my shelf. That was different, I said calmly. This is a specialized skill. You need a professional. Have you tried searching online for a local emergency plumber? There are apps for that now. You're super resourceful. I'm sure you'll find someone great. I can't afford an emergency plumber. They charge a fortune. Well, that's the market rate for skilled labor. It's important to value people's expertise. But hey, I'm sure you can find some tutorials on YouTube. You're a strong, independent woman. You can handle this. I believe in you. What's girl power? I heard a strangled noise on the other end of the line. I have to go. Game's starting, I said. Let me know how it turns out. Bye. I hung up before she could respond. I felt a little bad for about half a second. Then I remembered her lecture about restorative justice, while my back was still screaming from carrying her art supplies. The guilt vanished instantly. The next big challenge was the emotional support front. She had a massive fight with her best friend Jenna, something petty as usual. She called me, crying, expecting me to be her shoulder to cry on, her therapist, her validation machine. I listened patiently for about 5 minutes. Then I cut her off. Clara, this sounds like a really complex interpersonal issue, I said, using my best corporate jargon voice. And honestly, as your boyfriend, I'm too biased to give you objective advice. It wouldn't be healthy for our relationship dynamic for me to become your primary source of emotional processing. She was dead silent. As you've taught me, I continued, it's crucial for individuals, especially strong women like you, to develop their own internal coping mechanisms. Relying on a man for emotional validation is a patriarchal trap. Have you considered journaling, or perhaps speaking with a therapist who can provide you with the professional tools you need? I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting. I had built a fortress out of her own buzzwords, and she couldn't find a way in. I just wanted to talk to my boyfriend, she stammered. And I'm listening, I said. And as your boyfriend, my advice is to seek a more sustainable and empowering solution than simply offloading your emotional burden onto me. It's what's best for your long-term growth. The conversation ended shortly after that. She wasn't crying anymore. She was just cold. The final straw for her was seeing this new reality extend beyond just me. She was complaining to me one afternoon about that same male coworker from before. He'd apparently asked if she could cover for him for an hour so he could go to a dentist appointment. The sheer entitlement, she fumed. He just expects me to drop everything to accommodate his schedule. It's classic male privilege. I just nodded. Unbelievable. Later that day, she got a call. It was Jenna, her best friend, the one she'd had the fight with. I could only hear Clara's side of the conversation. What? No, I can't. I have that freelance deadline. Jenna, I just don't have the emotional capacity for that right now. Yes, I know it's important to you, but I have to protect my own energy. You need to learn to be more self-reliant. I'm not responsible for your happiness. My boundaries are not up for debate. She hung up the phone with a huff. Can you believe her? She said to me. She wanted me to spend all evening helping her pack up her apartment because she's moving. I looked at her. I didn't say anything. I just let the irony hang in the air, thick and suffocating. I don't think she even saw it. Or maybe she did, and just didn't want to admit it. Her world started to shrink. Her friends, who were all from the same school of thought, started treating her exactly how she treated them. Nobody was willing to offer a favor without a perfectly balanced transactional exchange. Nobody was willing to listen to a problem without first evaluating their own emotional bandwidth. Her network of strong, independent women was just a collection of individuals who were all fiercely protecting their own resources, unwilling to give an inch for fear of being exploited. She had successfully created the world she always talked about, and she was completely, utterly alone in it. The end came about a month ago. It was late, maybe 11 p.m. on a Thursday. I was already in bed reading. My phone rang. It was her. Her voice was shaking. I'm locked out of my apartment. I lost my keys. My phone is about to die. Can you please come get me? I have a spare key at your place. This was it. A genuine crisis, not a broken nail or a bad latte. A real problem. The old me would have been putting my shoes on. I took a deep breath. Clara, I can't, I said. What do you mean you can't? Please, I'm scared. It's dark out here. I've been drinking, I lied. I had a couple of beers. I can't drive. It would be irresponsible. Then call a cab for me, please. My phone is about to die too, I lied again. It's on 2%. I can't risk it shutting off. What if I have an emergency? There was a long, desperate silence. I could hear her start to cry. You're really not going to help me? She whispered, and I delivered the final blow, the one I had been saving. Clara, I said, my voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand, I am not responsible for your poor planning. I am not obligated to solve a crisis that you created. It is not my job to rescue you. You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you anything. That was the deal. I hung up. I turned my phone off. I went to sleep. I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I turned my phone on. There were 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages, ending with a single, two-word message sent at 3 a.m. I hate you. Later that day, she sent a long text saying we were over, that I was a heartless monster, a sociopath, the definition of toxic masculinity. I just replied with, okay. A week later, a box with my stuff was left with the concierge at my building. Her spare key was taped to the top. I haven't heard from her since. Our mutual friend told me that Clara ended up having to call a 24-hour locksmith that night, cost her almost $400. She had to sit on the floor in her hallway for 2 hours waiting for him. He also told me that her friend group has basically dissolved. Apparently, they all got tired of each other's boundaries. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel angry. I just feel free. I learned something from all this. Relationships aren't about transactions. They're about partnership. They're about mutual support. You help someone move a couch not because you owe them, but because you care about them, and you know they'd do the same for you. She saw relationships as a power struggle. She saw kindness as weakness to be exploited. She wanted all the benefits of a relationship without any of the responsibilities. All I did was give her exactly what she asked for, a world with no favors. No compassion, no one going the extra mile, just a cold, hard ledger of what everyone owes everyone else. And it turns out, in a world like that, when you finally need help, you have no one to call.